every evening I walk into the theater, Carly gives me the night stories that have been spun by random. I go through and I see minute 0, 1, 2, 3, and I might look and say, well, that's awfully, that's a lot of words there. And I look, and then because I know what the menu items are, I'll say, maybe I should exchange one later for that one to give myself a breather, to give the audience a breather. So I also use it. And we have a thing called the whiteout. And every night I ask Ted where in the list is going to be the whiteout. You want to say what that is?
Sure, that's the time when you couldn't hear Bill because the sound was so loud. That's the whiteout. And often that's longer, 3, 4, 5 minutes. For some reason it's been not so long. Oh, you know why? Because random.org gave us the screen sequence early in the program, and so early in the sequence. And so I think if in the first 10 minutes of the show you couldn't hear Bill for 4 minutes, that would be even stranger than we.
Former screen sequence.
That's right.
But also you'll have noticed there are obvious moments when the storyline is juxtaposed or mimicked by the dance. Every system needs to be broken sometime.
And also that's when I see where there's going to be universal stillness. And that's also determined by random.org, when everything, Ted, me, the dancers, everyone has to stop for 1 minute. There were some people over here who were such nice people. They were applauding. They were. No, I don't.
Yeah, hi.
They thought that the piece was over because we were still. That was very nice. I just wanted to acknowledge you, but that would have not been right.
Yeah, hi. Is there a degree of improvisation in the dance, or is it, previously choreographed? When dancers come out each night, is there a degree?
There's randomness, but there's not a lot of improvisation. You understand the distinction, right?
Yeah.
They all know what's going to happen, but they have to figure out how they're going to get from point A to point B and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Where would there be improvisation?
Parallel.
Well, there's an behavioral or an activity which we call paralleling, something that Lois Welk developed. It's an exercise that comes from observing birds. Mm-hmm. One person, Tolly Jackson, stands, and that's the very opening image, and they're all standing around, and when he moves, they must keep that distance from him. So they're allowed to circle him 360 degrees, but they have to keep that distance. So I guess you'd say that sort of behavior is improvisational, task-based movement.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Why don't we get rid of one of the microphones for a time?
Hello. Hi, first I'd like to say the performance was amazing. The dancers are incredible. The choreography just blew me away. The dancers used their space well, but my question is, what is the significance with the apples? Why 6 in the cube, and then I think there were about 3 or 4 that the dancers were passing back and forth, and what's the deal with the squares? Like, why are the apples all green? Why not red? Why not yellow?
After what you've seen, you're going to ask me to really do Well, there are, I had an experience. There's even a story that starts with Charlottesville, Virginia, and an older man, who happened to be an older white man, who brought us our car. And now these jobs, as my companion and I often rent cars, they're ever more. He was retirement age, male and white. The people in these positions are ever more young, female, and people of color. And I was watching him later in the corporate office, and he takes out a clean handkerchief, dries or wipes his green apple, and so closes his eyes soulfully and takes a bite. Now that story, do you remember that story? Yes, that's a key story for me, but it's not, if you don't get it, you don't get it. So the apples, in my way of thinking, are already loaded with signification because of that one story. Then you begin to attract other ones. The number of apples, Everyone's supposed to have one, right?
Everyone's supposed to have one.
They're supposed to have one, but maybe there was so many there because somebody knew that they had to enter over here, so their apple is over here. That's what it is. And the significance of the squares?
No, the significance of the apples, and then I guess also.
Well, okay, I've given you as much of the apples as I can. In a piece like this, I think a work is interesting when it plays well in the mind. Now you go back through and you think of the moments when that apple came into your consciousness, Eric throwing it up, people passing it and so on. To me, that's just another way of making thread. But now, so that's as much as I'll say. This is a construction. The whole evening is constructed with tiny parts, details, and you complete the construction. The squares?
Well, the squares started when Bill was doing a solo in Milan, at the Cathedral of Milan, 2 parts chaconne, for solo violin, and he was dancing in front of the altars. There was no way to put any decor in. But as we were having dinner, I think, a couple of nights, if I remember correctly, before the performance, on a napkin or something like that, he was speaking, what can we do to give a structure? And we had the idea of the grid as a simple geographic map for him to move through the score. And
Yes, weren't there 16 there? And then,
I remember 8.
There are 64 variations.
Oh yes, exactly. And we calculated how to make 16 squares.
So
there were
choreography is going to be built around those 16
variations.
squares and the variations.
And we've kept that for a few pieces because when I have been designing the sets in the past years, and when Bill starts a work and he turns to me to say, give me an environment to work in, I think that it's for me it's putting the cart before the horse, because I need to be responding to his choreography with my design rather than paving the way. But this has given us this roadmap which is useful. That's the significance of the square.
I wanted it to be hyper-rationalist. Hyper-rationalist. So you see the way space is divided, everything has, like literally, every minute is counted. But we know that when we get into a work of art, the rationality begins to smush and disappear and so on. So that is the conversation you and I are having. Unfortunately, this is the only night we've seen, because there have been other nights when all of the squares are gone. So we have more confidence about it. We don't need them. But I like what they do, and I think they light very beautifully. Yeah.
And these have numbers.
Yeah, they had numbers on them, and then I decided just before this run that we didn't need the numbers.
But those numbers, which still exist in the dancer's mind, figure on the crib sheets, telling them what square they will dance the movement in at what minute and so on.
And this lady is.
Oh, yes. Hi. I had a question regarding the choreography. So you said that all the choreography is random, but it's like, is it pre-choreographed? Is this
This is choreography taken from
pieces?
Well, at least 30 plus years.
Okay.
And what Janet does in class, and a work that we've been working on for the future. Yes. Yes. The lady up there has been trying to...
It is put to that story.
Pardon?
This lady has a mic.
One moment, please. One moment. Sorry.
So I was wondering about the stories and the selection of stories. It sounded as if they were all your reminiscences. Were there anybody else's stories?
And it came to
interwoven?
pass after 7 days,
Well,
the
yes,
waters of the
I got the Adam and Eve.
So I'm really sensitive to people trying to say anything about the piece. They were all this. The piece is about multiplicity, points of view, so on. Stories, memories, ruminations, associations. Now, what is that what you were saying about?
Well, it was partly that. The one you told a lot of stories about you and Arnie and things that happened to you, and then there were probably moments when there was the whiteout, and you couldn't quite hear me. So I was just wondering how you selected which of your memories to tell, and you changed them on different nights.
What you're saying right now could be a story. Why, you know, what I would make of it, the feeling of discomfort I have in answering it, could be, with some distance, it could be fashioned into a story. No, they're not all, this is not necessarily autobiography, but they are accessible to me. They're close to me, and they're talking about the different things that I'm preoccupied with. Art, morality, race, sex, art, time, death, life. Those are things I'm preoccupied with. Sound familiar? Yeah? And therefore the stories have to be personal, because those are the ones that are going to, that I don't strain. And there are things from other people's writings, of course. Pardon? Antonio. Antonio could have any woman that he wanted, right? That's Antonio's story. One of the dancers' story, actually, about touring romance. Because I had asked them all to contribute. Very few of them. I've kept 3 that Tali brought in. Tali has 3 stories they came from. That was the Persian story, Rustam, with Hafiz. That was, there's another one, Wakinyan Eyah, you know, I wouldn't want to be your companion, and another one. And so they all brought them in, and I've only kept a few of them, actually. Yeah. Introduction?
Hello, I'm Joseph Paulson. I'm originally from Philadelphia.
Antonio Brown from Cleveland, Ohio.
Rena Butler from Chicago.
LaMichael Leonard from Florida.
Jenna Regal from Iowa.
Tali Jackson from New York.
Eric Montes from the Mexican Republic.
Shayla B. Jenkins from Jersey.
Yiling Liu from Taiwan.
Are those stories attached to those, I'm sorry, are those dances attached to those stories?
Are you asking the dancers, are they attached to the stories?
Yeah. When you, I can't seem to find my voice. When you start to tell a certain story, they know which dance to do, correct?
No. There's a few stories that are tethered to movement, but most of them are independent.
I see. So it's also random which story meets which dance.
Yes,
Thank you.
except for a few crafted moments.
Got it.
Woman sitting on a couch, so on and so forth. They're melodramas, we call them. They're connected to certain material.
And the pieces of paper tell the dancers what stories to do.
I'm sorry?
How do they know which stories, which dances to do? It's on the piece of paper.
We have a menu of 200 items taken from 30 plus years of creation.
Yep.
Janet spins to get 70 minutes. Then the dancers, those are the items they're going to dance. You can imagine what the rehearsal was like.
Uh-huh.
Then the stories are added or are given to me. And that's how they meet in the tech rehearsal.
In the tech rehearsal?
Well, in performance, since we didn't have a tech rehearsal, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. This person over here.
Hi. Random Battle definitely had a liking for one of your stories, which was the landlord story.
I mean the melodrama. The melodrama, we call it.
Yes.
Which had 3 variations.
Yes. Which of the 3 variations was the real one? And
an old woman is sitting alone on the couch, distraught because she can't pay her rent. That is the base story. That's melodrama 1. Melodrama 1 has 2 variations. One is Shayla sitting alone, no connection, just sitting. The other one with another company member, just happened to be Joe tonight, sitting there. That is how. Then there's melodrama 2, which is Eric is sitting alone on the couch. He is depressed for a personal reason. That is the one where we name individual people. And then there's melodrama 3, which is in silence. Right.
But
so what we.
None of them are biographical.
Oh, were you asking if they're biographical?
No, not necessarily biographical. However, I was just curious, like, what was the entire story behind it? Why you decided to change the storyline from one to another, rather?
Okay. So, first of all, I thought I wanted to do something which would be extremely anti-Cajun. We would do mime, pantomime, the dumbest possible storytelling. Right? Really?
Would still look good. Would still look good.
Well, I wasn't concerned about the look, but I thought you would get the reference.
Yes.
Nobody dances like, well, I don't know. In this house, nobody dances like that. Right? So I thought that would be like, it would be kind of a wink. But the fact is that as you begin to, it's about narrative and movement. By watching, you begin to understand how to read the movement. And then when we change the names, the movement is still there telling the same story, or is it telling a related story? And what happens when the movement is taken and the text is taken away? A real concern of mine, how do you have meaning that's connected to language, take away language, and can the piece that is there have its own meaning that fractures because of your familiarity with it, having heard it and seen it in different ways? It was a game I'm playing with you and your perception.
Which worked.
Yeah, thank you. Your person there?
So my question is sort of for everybody, being the eyes and ears and also the bodies of the piece, and having taken source material kind of from 30 years of content, how does that affect your performance and your kind of the way you see it in terms of kind of taking something from like years ago but putting it in this context, and then how do you go back? Like how does that affect going back and doing that same piece or something in the future?
Is that to the dance?
Everybody.
Okay, do you understand the question? Everybody? Would you say it one more time, sir? What?
Yeah, so how does being in the piece and kind of doing work from kind of all over affect being in that work, now doing it in this context? Like how does it reverse back?
Hi. It's very challenging because the way some of the material, for example, some of the Black Mountain of Valley Cottage are the duets. In my case, I do the duet with Michael, or Jenna with Tali do Share Distance. They are very old. Sorry, but very material from the past. But the way that Janet has built the system to getting into our bodies, into our modern train, it has a very organic logic. Actually, I'm going into but tonight I discovered that I was like going to some very new material from Janet's phrasing, and then I went to Valley Cottage, and the only thing that I was needed to think was just to kind of ground me more, and then go into Arnie's position on material, and that was it. But after a good time of training, it's challenging because you need to perform it with a different perspective, but the foundation layer of it, you have the principles of it. So it's
So you think that what Janet teaches in classes prepares you to do Valley Cottage, Loud Belt, and Monkey Run Road?
Yes. Oh no!
Well, that's good. Very good.
Jenna wants to ask something.
it just adds history. So, you know, anytime you have to do something repeatedly under a different circumstance, it just builds more trust and more history between whoever you have to do it with. Sometimes that's changing, sometimes that cast is changing, and sometimes it's the same person, but regardless, it's just more familiarity, more history. And I think that's really important for your company.
I appreciate the candor, but I'm having dissonance tonight, a lot of dissonance. Right? Because this person was asking, there was a question, what is history? I feel that there's something about being middle-aged that allows you to even think about history. Because there's enough performances and enough distance from those nights in 1980, 81, when Arnie and I were doing Blauvelt Mountain on the stage of DTW, the old DTW, that I don't think any of them yet have been long enough in the dance world to have a 30-year-ago feeling about something. And there's something about a company which is a living thing. Arnie is gone, I am here, I no longer perform. Arnie never heard of Janet Wong. Janet Wong is the first associate artistic director the company has had since Arnie died. Janet Wong came in as a rehearsal director at a time that I was very concerned about a style that wanted to be away from Bill and Arnie. Bill and Arnie didn't have feet. Bill and Arnie did not do pirouette turns unless they were making fun of pirouettes. Bill and Arnie were still coming from the counterculture that thought that people who were in ballet were what we call technocrats. Because we were the brave new religion of Trisha, of Steve Paxton, of all the big kids in New York, who incidentally we didn't see but read about. So those works literally were made by two guys who were making it up. Gym locked gymnastics is what we were doing. We had technique was what we taught ourselves to do, yoga or what have you. We did not stand in passe. We did not. I meet Janet and I see the future and I see how my taste is changing and I see how my own body is dancing. Wants more turnout, virtuosity. I want to use the feet. I said to Janet, I am going to be retiring. Can you help me make the dancer that we need? And that dancer has to come from your smarts of understanding classical alignment, and it has to come from you and my both loving the work of Trisha and some other traditional makers. She set out in a scientific frame of mind to develop exercises. These works came relatively late. It was actually when we were doing the what anniversary?
So we're talking about the duets.
Blah, yeah.
We first revived them in 2002.
And she'd been working with the company since 95.
Since 96.
96. When Janet came in, we were not doing these works. We had to go back and she had to learn them from tapes and I had to from body memory. So it was in some ways, it was a retrograde. Go back to the basics, get people who have a lot of facility to understand what it means to move when you don't have as much facility, but you have a very active constructivist imagination. Arnie was a visual artist. We talked about our bodies like things. We were learning from independent film. We both studied Stan Brakhage, Paul Sharits, Michael Snow, and Jonas Makis, Peter Kabelka. Film is 24 still images moving in front of a light source per second. 24 images per second is what a film is. That's what we thought was really interesting. So we set out to make dance, movement, broken up like still pictures. In the work that they're doing, and I was dangling to answer the question, what I challenge the most when I see them dancing, because they have the facility and they're very smart, is can they get the sense of stillness that we had when we were working together and making shapes? We were really interested if you do 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then you do 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, ba, 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 ba. That's how we thought about time. So they're doing really well, but the thing that I'm most scared of is when I am gone, who will be able to teach it, not as it was taught even by Janet, but who will be able to understand what it was when it was originally done? And you know what? I think that's one of the first things that history eats. History doesn't give a fuck how you did it. Who cares about what the first Petipa Sleeping Beauty was? We've had so many versions of it right now. That's what history is, a voracious monster. So the ego of a creator is one of the first things that history crushes under its heel. Because the young will make of it what they will. Now we do have video. But videos are limited. The video is limited. And it's also one night. And in those dances, there was improvisation. I see now that they are learning what I did on improvisational night.
Intentionally, knowing that it's an improvisation.
Yeah.
Just to have a blueprint.
Just to have a, well, but then I think, I don't know if it's lack of courage, but when we do and do it times 2, I mean, when they come across this, that was one night that I was feeling particularly groovy, right? And now we spend a lot of time, so what are you doing? What is that? That was something that was like an improvisation. And then when it goes off, right? What is that? That was how Bill was feeling, but we study that.
No, not necessarily. I think sometimes we study the intention we study the intention, and the dancers determine. Bill wasn't doing what Michael's doing going across, but the intention was, as Bill explained it, is you're tracking your partner in front and you're doing this thing, and it increases in speed and intensity until you get stopped. Did we do that today? No. We didn't get to that. We didn't do that section, so you didn't see that.
I was referring to a personal history between the dancers. Which kind of goes along with what you were saying in terms of getting crushed under the...
Because it is a living thing. It is a living thing. This is your moment on stage bringing it alive. And the question is, what is the it? And that's what is so difficult, being middle-aged. What is the it? That it that you are feeling is dead. This is another it. Whose is it? Hers? Mine? All of ours? People are leaving the company. Somebody else will come in and has to learn it really fast. What happened to that initial intent?
Well, on that note, Bill, I think it might be time to conclude this conversation.
Thank you all very much. Good night.